You're on.
Good evening. Today's Thursday, and this show also will be seen tomorrow, which is Friday. And if you're watching this Friday, good afternoon. Today's topic is eliminating child poverty in Danbury. Throughout the show, we're going to learn from two daring, loving individuals who will share with us how they are participating in an initiative to eliminate child poverty in Danbury. I would like to introduce Mr. Bobby Poole, who is the Executive Director for CACD, and also Mrs. Glenda Armstrong, who is the President of the Board of Directors for CACD. Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
You came on the show before,
Yes.
so you're not new, and I would like to say welcome, Mrs. Armstrong. This is your first time on the show.
Yes, it is.
Okay, this is a very important show for me because we have CACD is taking the initiative or be part of an initiative to eliminate child poverty. And I would, as the Executive Director of CACD, I would like for you to first of all tell us what this initiative is all about and what is poverty.
Okay. Let's talk a moment about poverty. A lot of people define poverty, well, the federal government has established income levels for poverty for different sizes of households. And in one case, if you have a household of one, the federal government says that $10,000 worth of annual income is 100% of what they call a federal poverty level. And then these numbers go up as you increase in household size, and they also are adjusted for special cost of living in places like Alaska and Hawaii. But unfortunately, these numbers have not changed significantly in many years. And in the state of Connecticut, particularly in the greater Danbury area, if you look at the cost of living here, a household of anywhere from 3 to 4 has really to earn about $50,000 a year in order to live, or that is considered to be what one might call a fair living wage. So if you're at that level, then you are probably doing okay, but you could easily slip into a challenged socioeconomic situation. So when you look at the federal poverty level guidelines versus what really it costs to live in local areas, those numbers are significantly different.
So it's different. The state guideline is different from the federal, and also, are you saying that there's many different guidelines for poverty level?
Well, what I'm saying is that the federal government established federal poverty guideline levels, okay? And then as you come down to various state levels, okay, they use different measures from the standpoint of various benefit programs that are provided to residents. Okay, one of the measures that are commonly used in the state of Connecticut is 60% of the median statewide income in order to qualify for benefits. That number is significantly higher than what one would call the federal poverty guideline levels.
Okay, define poverty for me, please.
Well, in a lot of cases, poverty is defined by household income. Okay, so let's take the federal poverty guideline levels. And if you look at a household of one, I say, if you're making a household income of $10,000 or less, you're considered to be in poverty. Then you go on up from 100% to 150% to 200%. And you start looking at 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. At that level, in the state of Connecticut, you are still in poverty, okay, in most cases, because the cost of living in the state of Connecticut far exceeds what is considered to be 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So when you look at poverty from a economic standpoint, it is usually defined by household income and household size, i.e. the number of people who are part of that household.
And basically, if you are a family, if you're a family that of 4 people and you're earning between $8 to $10 an hour, you're going to have to work as much as 130 hours a week just to be able to live in the city of Danbury, to be able to pay your rent, to be able to buy food for your family, to be able to put groceries on the table, to be able to put shoes on your kids' feet. So that's the simplest way to kind of put it as it relates to poverty, as it relates to Danbury. And there's a lot of folks in Danbury who make between $8 and $10 an hour. Those are simple. So are all those people in poverty? Probably not, because there's another family member that's making more money than that. But if you're the only primary breadwinner in your family and you're making $8 to $10 an hour, and there are lots of families who do this, you are considered to be in poverty or not being able to live in the city of Danbury.
Why are we discussing this tonight?
Because it's a major initiative, not only by our agency, but by anti-poverty agencies across the state. And the governor has, along with the legislature, has made this a priority in the state of Connecticut, in one of the richest states in the country.
I think the other thing is that when we as a society fail to address those individuals who might be living in poverty, we are really robbing ourselves of the opportunities for those individuals to make a full contribution to our society. So therefore, we tend to not take advantage, okay, or not benefit as a society in total from the skills and abilities of all of our citizens.
So whose responsible is it to bring people out of poverty?
We have looked at a number of let's say, statements about coming out of poverty. And one of them says that rising out of poverty is a choice. Okay, so we don't say that individuals who find themselves in poverty, okay, don't have some responsibility for raising themselves out of poverty. But we also say that eliminating poverty is everybody's responsibility, okay? Because if we all pull together, okay, we can make a better world for all of our citizens, okay, even those who may have been born in poverty, but because of special circumstances and opportunities, they are able to rise out of poverty. So we say that eliminating poverty is everybody's responsibility.
And poverty impacts everybody along the continuum, not just the people who are in poverty, but it impacts everybody in our community. And that's why it's everybody's responsibility.
How is poverty impacting someone in Richfield? If you have poverty in Danbury, how is it impacting someone in Richfield? And how would Richfield participating in eliminating the poverty in Danbury?
We serve how many different towns, Bobby?
We serve 19 towns and
Richfield being one.
cities.
Richfield?
Yes. Right. And believe it or not, there are many residents, okay, in Richfield, even though you look at what one might call the median household income there, you look at the median cost of a house there. There are many people who are seniors that have their homes but have limited income and would fall into the category of being in poverty in very, very affluent towns, okay, across the state.
Now, or who have previously worked in serious capacities in those communities and now find themselves unable to work in those positions. Now they find themselves in poverty.
Okay. Before we go on to talk about poverty, could you please tell us exactly what CACD does and what you do, your role in CACD?
Well, as the executive director, in conjunction with the board of directors, we really set the strategic direction for the agency and provide guidance and direction in managing the program initiatives or the program efforts. CACD is a community action agency that was established in the late 1960s. Across this country, across this nation, these types of agencies were established in order to combat what one might call the war on poverty. Community action agencies are a unique entity in themselves in communities because their board of directors is made up of what we define and what the regulatory agencies defined as a tripartite board, which is composed of 1/3 of representatives from what we call low-income neighborhoods, 1/3 comes from the private sector, and 1/3 comes from either politically elected officials or their designees. So therefore, we're looking for that mix of people who have political influence, people who have private resources, and also the representation that comes from being able to understand the challenges that low-income families incur within their neighborhoods and within larger cities themselves. So, at CACD, we have let's say, probably about 3 major programs that really address many issues. Our daycare center, which is a NIAC accredited center, provides for 125 kids who are usually in families that have incomes that are considered to be low. Our program is supported by the Department of Social Services, the State Department of Education through the Danbury School Readiness Program, and also we have several what we would call private slots. And these 125 families are provided assistance, direction, and guidance from the standpoint of nutrition, from the standpoint of nursing activity, and that is one of the ways that you put a foundation under low-income families, by providing them with child care so that they are able to be fully employed. And in most cases, practically all of those 125 families are employed, if not in 2 jobs, at least in 1 job. Second program that we run is energy assistance, and this program provides for households who might have some challenges around primary heating needs. So we do oil deliveries. We help people who use either natural gas or electricity from the standpoint of primary heat. And these programs were initiated at the federal level, and they're called the Low-Income Heating Home Energy Assistance Program. And out of that program, we also do furnace repairs, furnace replacements, indeed, where it's required. And in a given year, we will probably serve somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,200 households in those 19 towns and cities that we serve. We have an area that we call neighborhood services, and under neighborhood services, we provide housing mediation to individuals who may have temporary situations along, let's say, rental arrearage that might be facing eviction, or individuals who might have a need from the standpoint of assistance as a result of a crisis in their lives, from the standpoint of bringing their mortgage current. On a given year, we might serve somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 100 families in that program. And then we do some what we might call one-time events dealing with Thanksgiving baskets for families, Christmas basket for families, Easter baskets for families. And one of the things that we run on a continual basis is a food pantry through collaboration with the Danbury Housing Authority, collaboration with New Hope Baptist Church. Every Thursday evening, Thursday, from about 2:30 until about 4:30, 5 o'clock, we open our food pantry to individuals and families who are in need of food on a weekly basis. So those represent some of the major programs, and we continue to look at opportunities to, one, collaborate with other agencies within our community, but also to find ways to bring economic resources to low-income families. And one of the programs that the previous Commissioner of the Department of Social Services asked all of the community action agencies to get involved in was the Earned Income Tax Credit. And through this program, low-income families are able to get, on an average, if you fall into that category from an income standpoint, about $2,000 worth of tax credits per child, up to maybe possibly $6,000 maximum. Okay, and we provide and repair those. We provide and prepare those income tax returns for these families free. This past year, we did about 150 income tax returns, and we hopefully will continue to grow that program. So it's another way of putting what one might call somewhat of a foundation on the low-income families, so that they will have more dollars to invest in themselves, invest in their children, and improve the overall quality of their life.
Okay. Mrs. Armstrong, what is your participation with the organization?
Presently, I'm the president of CACD's Board of Directors. And the Board of Directors, that Bobby mentioned earlier, is made up of 3 parts of the community. And I don't recall any other organization that is so equally represented. We have folks who live or represent the low-income sector of Danbury. We have other members that are from private corporations and organizations. And we also have folks who represent the political or the governmental structure here in Danbury and the surrounding communities. We serve a 19-town area, so we look for representation from any and all of those towns. We impact people in a pretty large geographical area. And so it's important that those areas are equally represented, and to make sure that the board is able to voice and to represent the opinions and needs of those people in those communities.
Okay. Let's talk about child poverty. We touch on poverty, but when we talk about children and poverty, that's very disturbing.
Right.
It's very disturbing. And CACD is participating in the initiative to eliminate child poverty in Danbury by 50%. Okay, how are you planning to do this?
Well, we're not just talking about Danbury. We're talking about the whole 19 towns that we represent, that we serve in some capacity or another. One of the things that's really important to understand that for every child, there's usually an adult to go along with that child, or 2 adults, or 3 adults, or a whole family. If the children are in poverty, so are the adults that support them and that is responsible for them. And so in essence, what we're talking about is raising families out of poverty, because children are the weakest of all. And if you support and move the most weak out of a negative situation, then you're really bringing the others along with it. So it is important that we focus in on families, and children are in families. Even no matter what we think the family structure is or what we believe it to be, children are in those families. And if we can support them coming out of poverty, then we're in essence supporting the whole family to move in that direction as well.
How many families, how many children are in poverty? Let's just say Danbury or in the surrounding towns.
Well, if you look at Danbury, Our numbers, just looking at, I believe, data from maybe 2000 that we were able to call out, there's probably in excess of 3,000 families in the city of Danbury who would probably fall into what we would call the poverty income levels associated or defined by the federal government. But remember, we were talking about that cost of living number, that, you know, if you're a household of 3 or 4 in the Danbury area, and if your household isn't earning somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000, it's almost like you are that's the poverty income level for, you know, the city of Danbury and some of the surrounding. A family of 4.
Family of 4, $50,000.
Yeah, $50,000 household income. If you're at that level or below, then you could almost be considered to be approaching a poverty situation.
Or in need of some services from the community in some form or fashion, some kind of assistance.
You look at poverty and you say, how does it impact the lives of children and families? You look at where they are from the standpoint of developing the educational or either their vocabulary when you start talking about early childhood education and kids moving into kindergarten or either primary education. We find that people who have not had kids who have not had the benefit of early childhood education are at a significant disadvantage. And therefore, when they go into the elementary schools, there is a need for what one might call supplemental services to be provided to those children in order to make them, let's say, meet what we would call the educational standards that we would like for our kids to achieve. That's an additional investment. And if those kids aren't there by the time that they're usually in the 3rd grade, then that investment is going to have to be made as those children move up the educational ladder. And if you begin to look at many of these challenges that children incur, they occur because of the socioeconomic level. So now we say, how can we put some kind of foundation under it, whether it's health care, whether it's child care, whether it's after-school activities, whether it's enrichment activities. How can we put a package of goods and services around a family that is low income that allows them to, one, improve the skills that they have, thereby hopefully increasing the vertical mobility that they would have in society, improving the overall income, and rising out of poverty, and being able to fully contribute to our society, as well as raising their children in a much more sound economic environment.
Okay, I would like to say that if you want to participate in this discussion, the phone number is 792-4101, 792-4101. We would like to hear from you. Okay, here's a disturbing fact, okay? In 2004, the Connecticut legislature passed a law to reduce child poverty by 50%, okay? They passed the law. Sounds good, right? Mm-hmm. However, they did not give the money to implement that initiative. So, it's just like No Child Left Behind. We want you to do this, but you have to go and find the money yourselves. How do you plan to reduce child poverty by 50% when you don't have the backup?
Well, I think that there are a number of things that have to occur. The political will, one, has to be developed, okay, and has to be implemented and executed. So therefore, funding...
It is a political will because they passed the law.
Yes. Well, I said, but the political will, okay, you pass the law, but that becomes what one might call press. Now you really have to follow up that press with either a redirection of resources or either an increase in resources in order to address those kinds of challenges. There are a number of challenges in our society that are caused by, let's say, low-income situations. Okay, Connecticut is a state that is really not focused on a service economy. It's sort of like a high-tech state. And in order for us to have jobs for people going forward, we've got to have good educational systems, good educational performance out of our citizens. Otherwise, the companies that require these kinds of employees are going to move to other states that can provide them with much more technically capable employees. So, you know, from an economic standpoint, we have to do this, even if we have to redirect some resources that we may have been putting into other programs. And we have to say, you know, we want all of our children to be healthy. Therefore, we look at Husky awareness. Okay, we want to make sure that families have health care for their kids so that that doesn't impede their social and educational development. If we look at, let's say, early childhood education, one of the initiatives that is really taking place now as the State Department of Education is increasing the amount of funding that is going to be made available for subsidized child care. Going into 2008, the hope is that they will increase the award by almost $2,000 per child, which means that, one, we can afford to make sure that we take care of our children. We can afford to make sure that we begin to compensate some of the very individuals that Ms. Armstrong was talking about that make anywhere from $8 to $11 an hour, okay, that we can begin to raise their standard of living and thereby raise their family standard of living. So, you know,
how do you do that? How do you do that when you look at the job situation here? Okay, actually they're saying that Connecticut is doing very well in terms of employment, higher than most states. But we have about, in Denver alone, 3,000 families, right? 3,000 families in poverty. Mm-hmm. You see that you said a family of 4, you have to make $50,000.
Right.
We know that in Danbury, it's almost impossible to make that without a certain level of education and to be able to have certain type of jobs.
Right.
Working in the mall, working in restaurants, doing certain jobs. Those things are not going to allow you to make $50,000 or more. And sometimes you can try as hard as you want, you will stay there. So it's almost like people are going to be in poverty unless they move to a state that is much more friendly to those who have low education or don't have the capability to make $50,000. So I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how do you help these people to get out of poverty, and what kind of resources that you're going to put in place that you don't already have?
Well, I think one of our major focuses initially is to raise people's awareness. I don't think people realize that folks are in poverty because they are working hard. Most of the folks in Danbury are in poverty because they are the working poor. These people are not sitting home every day. These people are not taking luxurious vacations. They are the working poor. They get up every morning. They back their 10-year-old car out of a driveway. They live in public housing. They are working poor, and they try hard. And like you said earlier, they try to get ahead. But because of the cost of living, because of the economics, because the perception in Danbury is that everybody is making over $50,000, that people just don't understand. So I think our first level of importance, a job, is to raise the awareness that folks of what's happening in Danbury and the greater Danbury area. We're considered to be a suburb of New York City. People come here because the cost of living is cheaper here than it is in New York. But families are suffering here, coming here. Rents are $1,200, as you said earlier. This is our first job, is to raise the awareness that my neighbors may not be faring as well as I am faring. That when things are happening in the community, I have to be aware of those things, not only for myself, but also for my neighbors or my neighbor's neighbor, because it's a task, and we're increasing in numbers of those families every day. I don't know the data such as Bobby does, but I know what I see. I go down to our office the other day, and there's so many folks down there that are qualifying for assistance for energy. It's more than I've seen this early in the process. People sitting on the stairs because they need the assistance. People aren't there because they just don't want it. They're working. They're bringing in their check stubs. They're bringing in their child care receipts. So they are working people who need the assistance just to survive.
Okay, they need the assistance. We're going to provide them with that. But how do you, knowing that how much money they are making, how do you get them out of that? How do you get them out of?
That's what I'm saying. It's the communities raising the awareness. Okay. To say that when it's time to, like Bobby said earlier, when it's time for us to say, why are we putting so much money into public education? Why are we putting so much money into services for the community? Why don't people provide this kind of enrichment activities for after-school programs, for community-based programs? Why do we need parks? Why do we need this? Why do we need that? The reason is because we have to be aware of what our neighbors are going through.
Okay.
And what our neighbors' neighbors are going through.
Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to hear what some of the resources that we're going to implement to get these 3,000, at least in Danbury, in the surrounding towns, out of poverty. Okay.
Fantastic. We'll be more than happy to talk about some concepts. But I go back and I say, I support what Ms. Armstrong has said, that this is not a single effort. And we're not saying that we're going to be the cure-all. We're saying that we want to collaborate with all of the other social service agencies, with all of the municipal and governmental entities, and with all of the private entities that exist in our communities to come together, develop an awareness, and redirect the resources that we already have into raising people out of poverty. Okay. And the biggest challenge is probably going to be, how do we address the issue of job skills for people, and how do we make sure that 100% of all of our kids graduate from high school?
Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we will discuss that.
Okay, thank you.